Not everything in the world is bad. Benjamin Netanyahu was just indicted on corruption charges. Here are some of the details of that.
Benjamin Netanyahu will be the first Israeli prime minister indicted while serving in office. The Attorney General has announced his final decision to indict Netanyahu on 3 charges of corruption. But the current political stalemate, with neither major party able to form a coalition government, it's not exactly clear what happens next. CNN's Oren Lieberman reports from Jerusalem.
Benjamin Netanyahu suffered his biggest blow as prime minister. This one not political, but legal. The first sitting prime minister to face criminal indictment in Israel's history. Netanyahu was defiant.
This evening, we are witnessing a governmental coup attempt against a prime minister by false libel and with a tenacious and contaminated investigation process.
The 70-year-old leader has spent years fighting against this very moment, proclaiming his innocence. Ever since the criminal investigations were made public nearly 3 years ago, Netanyahu has railed against them. A media-fueled witch hunt, he said, an attempt to topple him through the justice system when they couldn't beat him at the polls.
The time has come to investigate the investigators. It is time to investigate the prosecution that approves these contaminated investigations.
Israel's longest-serving prime minister faces charges in 3 cases. In case 4000, prosecutors say Netanyahu advanced regulatory benefits for his friend, a multimillionaire businessman. Those benefits were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. In exchange, prosecutors say Netanyahu received favorable news coverage from a news site owned by that businessman. In this case, Netanyahu faces the more serious charge of bribery, as well as the charge of fraud and breach of trust. In case 2000, prosecutors say Netanyahu was working on an arrangement with the owner of one of Israel's largest papers, Yediot Achronot. Netanyahu sought more favorable news coverage in exchange for limiting the circulation of the paper's rival. Netanyahu faces a charge of fraud and breach of trust in this case. Finally, in case 1000, prosecutors say Netanyahu received valuable gifts such as cigars and champagne from overseas businessmen, gifts they say a public servant shouldn't have received. Here, Netanyahu also faces a charge of fraud and breach of trust. Attorney General Avichai Mendelblit called it a very sad day for Israel, but rejected any idea that this was a political decision against the prime minister.
This is not an issue of right or left. It's not a matter of politics. This is a duty that everyone has to obey. This is my duty towards the public, that everyone will live in a state where any accusation of illegality is going to be checked and investigated.
Netanyahu's rival, former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz, called on him to step down. He said of Netanyahu, he is well aware that the grave and complex challenges facing the state of Israel, both in terms of security and in the societal and economic arenas, require a prime minister able to invest his full time, energy, and attention. Netanyahu failed to form a government twice. First after April's elections, and then again after September's elections. For months now, Israel has been stuck in political deadlock. That deadlock now protects Netanyahu. As long as no one can form a government, he remains prime minister. Oren Lieberman, CNN, Jerusalem.
Wow. Fascinating. I have no idea how this is going to unfold. I have no idea what's going to happen. If there's another election, I don't know what's going to happen. And what you see is a Trumpian flair in his response to this. The Trumpian flair is, it's a hoax, it's a witch hunt, and now it's time to investigate the investigators. And here's the thing, man. That might work. That's the counter argument, because it actually is true that sometimes, sometimes the corrupt accuse the uncorrupted of being the corrupt. So if he can convince people of that, then who knows what's going to happen. But, sometimes the people who are accused of being corrupt indeed are corrupt. And in the case of Benjamin Netanyahu, I have no doubt he's probably guilty. But by the way, it also should be noted, man, it's quite telling that this is what they take him down on. They're in other words, when they did, what was it called? Operation Protective Edge, I think, in 2014, where they killed 80% civilians in Gaza, including 500 children. They didn't say, oh, well, obviously, come on, man, war crimes, we're going to take you down. No. They went the route of corruption. But here's the thing, though. That is, like, legit. Like, going after them for corruption, I think, is perfectly fair game, and it's poignant, and it's powerful. I wish that the Democrats knew how to go after Trump in a way that's similar to as poignant it is when they go after Netanyahu. Because it's tough to get that stain off of you, especially because those, like, it sounds legit, like the criticism sound, because it sounds like the kind of corruption that's par for the course, that they wouldn't bat an eyelash at, and they would just do casually. Well, yeah, if people ever get serious about governing and about running a country and about strategy, that's one of the first things you go after is, no, that shouldn't be allowed. No. So, but in the case of the Democrats, I feel like they didn't use the right argument against Trump. As you guys know, I've gone over it 1,000 times. I won't go over it again. But the Cliff Notes version of it is, they're saying, oh my God, he tried to get dirt on Joe Biden from the Ukrainian prime minister or president, whatever it is. How dare he? How could he? When, my argument is you should have used a corruption argument, similar to like they use against Netanyahu with an emoluments violation and aiding a Saudi genocide. You got a corruption and genocide in the same scandal when it's taking hundreds of thousands from the Saudi government and then giving them a multi-billion-dollar weapons deal and helping them facilitate a genocide in Yemen. It's all there, but they didn't use that argument. So I feel like when Trump counters with investigate the investigators, this is a witch hunt, this is a hoax, I feel like Trump, in the long run, might actually win out that argument, which is terrifying, of course. In the case of Netanyahu, I'm not as confident Netanyahu can weather the storm because I don't know Israeli politics as well as I know American politics. And I feel like what they're going after Netanyahu for is a stronger argument than what the Democrats are going after Trump for. But there's been reports, by the way, that Donald Trump has backed off of his like overwhelming support of Netanyahu, particularly because he sees it like the legal troubles he's in, and he thinks that Netanyahu's going down. So he's like distanced himself because Trump, if there's anything he respects the most, it's like winners. And if at any point Netanyahu loses this and doesn't become a winner, becomes a loser, then Trump is going to be like, who? Who? I don't know Netanyahu. I don't know what y'all talking about. So you do see parallels between what's happening in Israel and what's happening in the U.S. right now. And it does feel like, particularly in the case of Israel, they're in this weird, untested gray zone where, like, who knows what happens next? He's protected by the gridlock that they have there because nobody can form a government. Nobody can form a coalition government. And so, I mean, I guess the next step would be elections again. And then I don't know what's going to happen in the elections. Is it possible he gets destroyed? Yes. But is it possible he wins? Yes. All that's possible. And it all depends on how much people believe his counter-argument about, no, I'm not the corrupt one. They're the corrupt ones. It's a witch hunt. It's a hoax. Investigate the investigators. They're fake news. Like, seriously Trumpian in his response here. And what we've learned from recent history is oftentimes that works, man. Oftentimes that works. But in the case of Netanyahu, it's gone a step further. He was officially indicted on these corruption charges. And, in a world that made sense, he would be going down. So there's still a chance he's going down, but it's not guaranteed yet. But this is a step in the direction of, in the proper direction of actually getting rid of the scourge that is Netanyahu. Although who knows if his replacement will be reasonable, or who knows if his replacement will do anything to facilitate peace with the Palestinians, because there's a history of the exact opposite from that government.